safe and removed. You never get hung up. Never.
Egg stuff is an even worse name for something like egg strudel. Egg and cooked sausage layered between yesterday's stale bread. Soggy bread is disgusting. My own mother would terrorize me on days I stayed homesick from school as she ate toast soaked in milk. If I'd gone to school, she seemed to be saying, as the milk seeped into her bread's natural gaps, threatening to turn it back into dough, I wouldn't have to witness this toast apocalypse. Worse, mush. Worse, milky mush. Egg stuff is another horrible example of soggy bread. Eggs ruining bread, bread ruining eggs. Overnight in the fridge, a day's worth of soaking. I could feel the bread collapsing between my fingers. The word moist comes to mind. Moist is a word Emily, Rebecca's friend and now my cousin, hated. She would also be at the breakfast. She was a vegetarian. Vegetarians can get out of eating anything. If I had true dreams in life, it is to have kids and be a vegetarian. But perhaps I am constitutionally ill-designed for either. So, for Christmas Eve breakfast, none of us talked about having kids. None of us ever did. We were 30. 30 feels young, so young, like as young as 19. Only people who had children in their 20s can tell the difference between 19 and 30. That morning, after making the bread suffer all night long in eggy, milky wetness, Rebecca cooked the egg stuff for 40 minutes. When she cut into the casserole, it wasn't soggy. The bread, though possibly moist, was not wet. The top was even crunchy. The sausage was excellent because it was sausage. Well, what did Emily eat? Not moist bread. Maybe Rebecca used vegetarian sausage. Still, the eggs had turned the bread into a kind of souffle. Humble beginnings. Delicious puffed entree. I wish it were Christmas Eve morning every day, although I continue to avoid milk toast and bread crust left in the bottom of the kitchen sink, and there were whole years, when Rebecca did not speak to me and I wanted my own personal eggs to work with, that I did not eat a single bite of once soggy bread. Things you might think are signs that are not signs. Soggy bread is not necessarily a sign of soggy breakfast. A late period is not necessarily a sign of pregnancy. A raised piece of hummus is not necessarily a mushroom. When I walk through the forest looking for mushrooms, I look for owls. I've never seen an owl in the forest. I look for them anyway. What do I want with a predator bird? Perhaps they are strong enough to slough off my wishing weight. Don't die, planet. Bring me a baby bird. Perhaps wish birds are the greatest equalizer. Staving off the end of the world is always, finally, a selfish hope. Baby, lie to me. Come live in my belly so the world can go on. Bird, bring me a baby. There are lots of ends of the world. Avian flu, melting glaciers, fracked water, Ebola, asteroids, listeria. Listeria is not one of them? Well, it should be, because if you're pregnant, you're told not to eat deli meats for the risk they carry of listeria, which would abort your fetus, which would be a small end of a very small world. Ends of the world are scalable. Human egg, ostrich egg, dinosaur egg. You shove so much personal loss into the giant shell of world problems. You allow your personal sadness to balloon like globes. Which came first, the fear of the end or the fear of the beginning? The worry over the apocalypse or the worry that your world, babyless, would never get started? It would be nice, you imagine, to carry all your worries in the space of an egg. It fits in your hand. If it fits in your hand, you can take care of it. If it fits in your hand, you can protect it. That game, the one where you run to the end of the row with a spoon holding an egg, you try not to drop the egg, it's the transfer that's the hardest part. Communicating that egg into the welcoming bowl of your teammate's spoon. It's hard to do. Have you put all these dreams into one basket? Are your hopes and dreams for the future just a dream that the future keeps going? Back and forth we pass the little egg. Charged with spoons, humans will parent anything. When you read about the history of eggs and when humans started eating them, you run across since the dawn of time in about every article. Dawn of time predated humans, but I suspect that even dinosaurs ate eggs. Even fish dined on their own caviar. It is easy to steal an egg even with a lizard brain, even with a fish brain. Here's where mammals win. Keeping her eggs tucked in the inside. Dinosaur, fish, or lizard looking for an egg, they'd have to dig through muscle and organ, maybe even liver, to get near your mammalian egg. And what would you find? A little pencil dot of a treat? Try poaching a pencil dot. Even hard-boiled, it's hard to find satisfaction. I tried talking to my eggs. I tried poking them with my fists. I tried rubbing progesterone cream onto them. Skin and muscle and that yellow belly fat they say will kill you were in my way. I was as satisfied as a dinosaur, as in not very. These eggs fulfilled neither me nor their destiny. Maybe they had been scrambled. Maybe I had sent too many subliminal, don't be fertilized, messages to them over the years. Maybe subliminal messages are the only kind they hear, carried subterranean from brain to stem to nerve to egg. Maybe they got the message and wouldn't forgive me. Maybe now that I wanted them, they had all the power. Like any wish, it seems emptier once it's spoken. Big rounds of air coming out of my mouth, like thought bubbles or balloons. It is easy to get pregnant if you're just hanging out, not trying, making eggs over easy in your nonstick pan. But getting pregnant when you're trying is harder. It's delicate business all of a sudden, the kind of stuff of which soufflés are made. It takes tools to empty an egg, leave the shell intact, an awl or a scalpel or a Dremel, hardcore garage-based tools, or a doctor's kit. To make a blown egg, Martha Stewart suggests drilling a hole with one of your tools, then using an unfolded paperclip, inserting it gently into the shell, piercing the yolk. Gently stir. This is sexy talk, and definitely how babies are made. The second step is harder, more like giving birth than getting pregnant. For this step, you have to go beyond the garage, possibly to the hospital, to buy Martha's 2-hole egg blower or 1-hole bias fix blower, available online. Perhaps these are like forceps. You should attend to your egg by putting your mouth upon the blower, as doctors are wont to place their mouths upon the vagina to extract the broken yolks of baby, and carefully blow, or suck if you are hungry, or if you are a doctor trying to use your mouth as forceps. Creating pressure inside the egg with your blower, you force the yolk and whites out the other end, which is not as romantic as what you had hoped to do with mouths, vaginas, or eggs. But this is what happens when you don't conceive naturally. You did this to yourself, you self-talker, spending all those years whispering don't to your ovaries. What egg in its right mind would suddenly do? Do you think this is up to you? The bald eagle in the 60s and 70s waited for her eggs to hatch. She waited, and she waited. She took her beak to one, drilled a hole in the top of it with an awl. The shell thin as paint, her beak barely bit the edges. The shell didn't crumble. It was stretchy like saran wrap. This was not a good fortress. Inside there was nothing. Hot air of a wish blew back in the eagle's face. The residue of the DDT rang through the broken shell, through the spit mud of the nest, down to the root hairs, out the mushroom mycelia, into the earth where the earth absorbed its proteins like cake flour absorbs its eggs. DDT cakes, although finally it inhabits the making of a cake, at least with bald eagles. The eggs collapse in your hand as soon as the heat of your human body touches them. Although humans have been eating eggs, scrambled or poached chicken, ostrich, or eagle since the dawn of time, it's suspected they didn't start baking with eggs until 6000 BC. Probably because they didn't start leavening bread until about that time. The concept of food as air, ground wheat into bread, beaten egg whites into meringue, was not the metaphor humans had been going for. Substance for substance was the original goal. Firsts are important. It was, first, important to get the meat out of meat, the oatmeal out of oats. But first implies a second, and that is how we got the eggs to finish the metaphor for the flying bird. The egg builds a cake by binding flour to milk, sugar to salt. The egg is the great negotiator. And though many call the egg a magician, you can see the work of an egg in the act of its whipping. Magic is misdirection, and the egg is very direct. For a souffle, whip the egg whites. Make a roux by coaxing hot butter into warm flour. This is a roux, unlike one for gravy or etouffee, that should not burn. Add warm milk to warm roux. Beat the egg yolks but do not whip them. Egg parts prefer different scoldings. Add cheese, temper the yolks with a bit of the bechamel, temper them again, meet the temperature in the middle. Fold in the average temperature, but quadruple the volume of egg whites. Keep your spatula straight. Turn the bowl a quarter, fold, turn the bowl another quarter, fold again. Oh, eggs, it's not magical, it's medical. I could spend my life doing surgery with you. The number of things you could do to an egg could have been man's only preoccupation. Man could have stayed out of the railroad business, the mining business, the timber business. He could have spent his whole species' life cooking eggs. Baked, coddled, scrambled, and foamed, whipped into omelets, into quiches, frittatas, and brulees, puff them into cookies, cakes, and pastry. Don't even eat them. Wash your hair. Give yourself a facial. Stir whites into your beef stock to remove impurities. Use eggs as glue or as a Band-Aid. Shine your leather shoes, clean your jewelry. We could have used all our resources focused only on the egg. A whole civilization built on the intricacies of egg science. But then the artist uses eggs too. Before oil painting, the artists ground their pigment into egg yolks to bind them together. Without the egg yolk, the face of Botticelli's baby Jesus would be nothing but cinnamon dust. Which came first? The science of figuring out how eggs bind paint together, or the art of making the image stick to the page? If I bind like glue, haven't I already made an image in my mind? What scientist doesn't explain his images? What artist doesn't know as much about the slipperiness of an egg yolk as a scientist? How can you tell the artist from the scientist, the chef from the everyday cook, in the way they crack an egg? I chant to my eggs. I envision a zygote. I find a quotation. I paint a picture of what I think I want to want. There was an egg. There were many eggs. They came first. They went away. Trying to chase a lost egg is like trying to catch an escaped hen. No one will sit down for you. Which came first? My fear of the end of the world or my fear of the end of me? When Rebecca paints, she paints with oil, not eggs. She paints while she makes a lemon cake into which she has poured 4 binding eggs. She plans to share the cake. She takes the cake to the gallery owner. The gallery owner offers the prospective buyer a piece of cake. Rebecca doesn't tell her about the eggs, the number of them, or how many she has cracked. It's no one's business what we do with our eggs. That's why their shells are opaque. No one is allowed to look in. No one's looking back, but everyone is thinking inside, inside, inside. There's a whole lot of potential in that egg. Everyone wants to hold it. Everyone loves the beginning of something, even when they don't know where the beginning will go. Eggs are the beginning because they are air and because they are glue, which is how we've kept it together for so long. Alternating currents, silence and speech, uterus full and uterus empty, potential, 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 chicken. Thanks.